And welcome back everyone to the video series dedicated show on MTV that likes to add a little gossip to its pillow talk. That's right, we're talking about The Challenge Season 39, Battle for a New Champion, The Reunion, Part 1. That's right, we're now at the reunion where we get to see half of the champs as well as a good amount of the contenders here. But before we get into any of the topics or the hot goss, the spilled tea, let's first get into the outfits that some of the contenders and challengers are wearing. I love the matching outfits from Big T and Melissa. They're looking very royal. A lot of people are looking pretty good for the most part. The only three outfits that really stand out to me, we have Corey's suit, which looks like he got the idea from Home Depot when looking at paint swatches. You have Callum, where it looks like he found two different floral rugs, cut them up to wear. And then you have Emmanuel looking like he's starting his own My Chemical Romance cover band. But now it's time for everybody to sit down, get ready for the cameras to roll. That is until Olivia shows up and starts walking across the stage to sit down at her couch. Nurys sees her and starts to get emotional. She walks off a stage crying. Come to find out, it could be because she hadn't seen Olivia in quite some time, and seeing her maybe triggered her to feel some emotions, as well as she mentioned that Horacio is not at the reunion. And for the most part, she was able to go through the whole season with him by her side, and now she has to be here feeling somewhat alone, that she doesn't have her number one right next to her, giving the support that she needs at this moment. But she gets help from Zara, and then she is able to compose herself. We get the show on the road for the reunion, where Maria Menounos is announcing who is here, the contenders, the champions. And right off the bat, Asaf has to make his presence known by poking fun at the champions, saying only half of them were able to win their elimination matchups and that they were only on the season for like 10 minutes at a time. Nobody says anything or does anything, and it just feels like that whole moment falls flat. I feel like there was this lightness when Maria says that Berna won't be at the reunion, and I think people were like, what? She's not? And how quickly everybody fell back to earth when Maria said, oh, but don't worry, we'll hear from her throughout the reunion. So that's always good to know that we're going to hear from Berna, which didn't really necessarily need to. We also know that Horacio is not at the reunion, but of course, because if you follow the MTV Challenge Instagram, they already said that they were going to Zoom feed him into the reunion at some point. They already spoiled that on their own Instagram page. Maria is asking some questions to all the contenders, gets to Melissa. She says like a sentence and a half before Asaf starts to interject and get argumentative with her. And then Corey has to jump in all of this. This was going to be a foreshadowing of what we were going to see later on in this reunion part 1, but Maria puts an end to it because we have to get the show on the road talking about the final. After we get this recap of the final of Emmanuel winning, we come back to the stage and Emmanuel's like, I'm a champion. Can I sit over with the champions? Can I go over there? I don't want to sit here with the contender. I want to sit over there. And Maria's like, calm it down. You know, you'll get to sit over there. I'll let you go sit over there at some point. Then Emmanuel talks about how right off the jump, he knew he was going to win this thing. Oh, I knew just walking into the house, I was going to win it. I was manifesting that I was going to win it. On the availability call, when they said, hey, did you want to come be on the Challenge 39? I knew at that moment I was going to win it. That's when Norice decides to say, oh, you only won because you copied off of Colleen's Sudoku. If he hadn't have undid his whole Sudoku puzzle and then completely copied off of Colleen, that Norice said that she would have won. And this is when Emmanuel said, yeah, maybe I looked just a little. This is funny because there was an exit interview that I did with Emmanuel where he was pretty adamant saying that he did not look once at anybody's puzzle, yet here he is at the reunion saying, yeah, I looked, maybe I looked a little, maybe I looked a lot. This is when Maria turns over to the champion saying, is Emmanuel worthy of being called a challenge champion? It seems pretty quiet over on the champion side. Nobody steps up rather quickly and says, yes, of course. I mean, at one point, Cara Maria says, a win is a win, which is not the biggest endorsement. And then Devin has to say, yeah, he won. He won the season full of losers, which I feel a lot of the challenge fandom would agree with Devin's sentiment right there. And then we get one of the most ridiculous segments I think I've ever seen in one of these challenge reunions. Maria bringing up Cory and the balance beam. All of a sudden, Maria's like, we want to test you. So they brought out a full balance beam for Cory to walk. Now, you might be looking at this going, well, the challenge wants to give Cory his redemption. I would say this is less about redemption and more of a joke from the challenge production. And with them making a joke, Cory is the butt of that joke. The challenge team is like, oh, Cory, you want to do more? You want to do more seasons in the future? Well, show us how badly you want to do those seasons in the future. You walk across that balance beam in front of everybody. This is the challenge poking fun and making fun. And I have to give it to Cory. One, he did it, but also he's a good sport about it. I just feel that this was just one huge joke. Very unnecessary in my opinion, but whatever. You know what else was unnecessary? Maria then announces that the reunion is going to be in 3 segments. It's not enough that the challenge season had a control, chaos, and conquest phase. It is not enough that the final had a control, chaos, and conquest phase. Oh, but the reunion has to have a control, chaos, and conquest. Why does everything need to be this gimmick? Why do we have to just elongate this gimmick until the very end, until the bitter end of this season? And this control phase just was useless. This was challenge trivia contenders versus champions, where they finally allow Emmanuel to walk across the stage and sit down with the champions for like a couple of trivia questions. He wasn't even helpful, but it was challenge trivia questions like, what was the first season ever called? Who was the first pair in challenge history to win a paired season? We find out that the contenders barely know the show that they're on or have been on, which is no surprise. And the champions were able to win this 2-1. I will say that I love that we got a soundbite from Coral. We got to see Coral featured on a challenge reunion. That was the biggest surprise of the night to me. And we got to see a clip from the Inferno Season 8. But that is the end of the control phase and the first couple of segments of the reunion. We go to a commercial break, come back, and we're talking about the Jay and Michelle alliance. This is where Jay is getting roasted by pretty much everybody up on stage. This is one of the only real segments that Jay is like featured on. For somebody who was in the season up until the final, as well as had his hands in so many cookie jars and so many plans within the game, he barely got any screen time in this reunion, or at least the part 1 of the reunion. Everybody has problems with Jay. Raven voiced her opinions about him not having a solid stance at all in the game, wants to talk about how he was just going with the flow, never really had an opinion, yet had all of these plans going on simultaneously. It seemed snaky, it seemed devious, as well as Michelle also critiqued Jay, saying that he was scapegoating a lot of the women. I will say that even though Jay and Michelle were hand in hand throughout this entire season, it sounds like a lot more people have problems with Jay than Michelle at this point, even though Laurel had some pretty big criticism with Michelle and her game that she played, as Michelle talked about how her and Jay are coming from Survivor, and that kind of gameplay is hard to translate onto the challenge. And then Laurel comes in saying, then why have you been playing like that your entire challenge career? If it's not working, then why don't you tweak something? And then Laurel gets into this whole thing of like, the challenge is more than just alliances. At a certain point, you're going to have to prove yourself down in the elimination ring and win an elimination. Cory comes to Michelle's aid, saying that Michelle, even though he didn't agree with a lot of her game decisions, played a really strong game, and that if she had not been purged in the final daily challenge of the season, she would have most definitely made it to the final. Devin pretty much summarizes everybody's alliance problems with everybody going outside of the alliance to canoodle with one another. That made things extra complex. Speaking of canoodling, this is where we get to hear from Callum, and Raven calls out Callum for what she would say is using Michelle. He had somebody back home, and then he was using Michelle to a certain extent. They were canoodling, but also the game has to factor in as well, and he did say that he was in the Michelle protection program. Upon hearing this criticism from Raven, Callum says that this smells and reeks of jealousy on Raven's side, which then sends Laurel into a rage, saying, "Shut up. What you did to Michelle was wrong. What you're saying about Raven is wrong. No woman should ever go through what Callum put Michelle through." Callum then pushes back on Laurel, saying, "How do you know what was going on in the house?" And Laurel's like, "I was in a house with you before, and I know how you are." Which they were on X on the Beach Peak of Love at one point. And so Laurel is like, "I know you. I've seen how you are in certain circumstances and romantic circumstances. When things were getting somewhat good, we have to pause everything for then Maria to collect and then turn to Asaf to ask him a question. Why? Why do we have to stop what is going on here? Clearly something fun and exciting is being talked about. Yet now we have to put everything on pause to what? Ask Asaf a question? Maria decides to ask, what is the Fantastic Four and why was it even implemented if they didn't do anything? You could ask that about most of the alliances made this season. Then Asaf was talking in circles about why the Fantastic Four alliance was made, and he talks himself into a frenzy to the point where he was like, "I need something to bail me out, so I'm gonna just blame Melissa for something." He just brings up Melissa's name out of nowhere, being like, "She did me dirty." That gets Melissa into it. Then because Melissa is talking, Corey feels like he can input because they've had some arguments on Twitter before. So now you have Asaf, Melissa, and Corey all speaking at once, all trying to talk over each other. And then something I've really never seen happen on a challenge reunion before, but Maria decides that she, in the midst of all this noise, is going to plug her ears and just start yelling. There has to be a better way to calm everybody down than just the host plugging their ears and just going, "Ah!" We then get an interesting exchange between Cara and Tori, where they're speaking and arguing about what happened on War of the Worlds 2. However, we now have to stop that line of talking because that's too interesting. We're just gonna put that on pause so we can ask a fan question to Olivia to start the chaos portion. There's so many things that I just don't care about, and I would much rather hear what the champions have to say and talk to each other about past seasons or whatever than whatever was going on this season. So that's another portion of the reunion. Then we come back from commercial and we actually get a very sentimental part of the reunion where we're talking about Big T and her coming out to not only the house guests, but to the world in general. And she wanted to do that on the challenge because she didn't want to hide herself anymore from the world and her own family. We finally hear what her family felt about her showing her true self and being her true self. And come to find out, her family accepts her for who she is. And at one point, even getting emotional and getting a little teary-eyed because she was moved by her niece, who DM'd her saying that she is a huge inspiration, that Big T is a huge inspiration to her. And this was a big moment for Big T because she lost her biological parents. She recently lost her adopted father. So she was worried about how her remaining family members would take the news of who she truly is, her true self. And I'm just so happy to hear that they truly love her and accept her. And then because of everything that happened surrounding Big T and how she was able to connect with Corey and looking to Corey at one point for help and guidance within the house and hoping to have that friendship that they could count on. And then Corey doing just a terrible decision of deciding to call out that he has been using and lying to Big T and Melissa just to get information from them within the game. And it was just terrible timing. It was poorly handled. This was a big mess that led to Big T saying that she did not accept Corey's apology and Corey telling Big T that they aren't friends, they never were friends, and both sides agree that they will never be friends in the foreseeable future. Once that was all said and done, we now go to Nurys, and this is the Norice show for a good portion of this reunion. And this is where Horacio is Zoom called into the reunion. Olivia is instantly questioned about how in a confessional, she described Horacio and Norice's relationship as interesting. Olivia said that she didn't feel like they would mesh well with each other, and she was skeptical of how this relationship would actually work out or if it would work out, but then says that she is happy for both Norice and Horacio that it is working out, and they seem very happy with one another. Norice says, "Nope, you're lying because, in fact, you are the biggest hater. Every time that she would go and talk to Olivia about Horacio, Olivia would always be like, well, he's not right for you. You can do much better if you have both of their good intentions at heart and you like both people. Why wouldn't you want them to be with each other? We hear from Laurel, who said that she too was also skeptical after hearing that Nurys and Horacio were speaking with one another and flirting with one another and possibly starting a relationship with one another, but she was very supportive. And this is when Tori says that, oh, when I first heard about Nurys and Horacio, the first person I contacted was Laurel, and she said that they are both really good looking, so good for them. Which is very supportive and very mature of Laurel, but at the same time, it's like, are Tori and Laurel really that close that Tori decides to just call up Laurel and be like, hey, did you hear about Nurys and Horacio? Like, is she really looking out for Laurel, or was she just trying to stir up some drama? Well, if she's anything like her BFF, Anissa, who is a subject of conversation for the next segment, which was between Olivia and Nurys, and how their friendship really evaporated throughout the course of this season, because we do hear from Nurys and Olivia, who they said that they were best friends. They would talk so much. They are like Big T and Melissa close before coming onto this season. But then when they got onto this season, Nurys got that phone call from her brother. So that put their friendship a little bit on ice. And then Olivia talks about how 3 weeks left in the game, a lot of things were shifting, and she decided that she was just going to go on her own way. She felt very alone in the game because Nurys and Horacio were hanging out with each other and all that stuff. And so she just felt alone in the game and just felt like she had to look out for herself and only herself. Nurys does bring up Anissa, saying that Anissa was the one that told her brother about Olivia's comments, saying that Nurys is broke and all this other stuff. This is when Tori brings up that Anissa said something to Nurys' brother during like Pillowtalk, and then she wants to play it off like, did I just say that? Did I just say that? It's like, I don't care where they talked about it. They could have been in an elevator. They could have ran into each other at the grocery store. It was such an unnecessary moment, and I didn't need to know their bedroom business, you know? Olivia was caught off guard by Anissa being this way because Anissa, like a week before she left for the season, Anissa like messaged her and was like, you go girl, I'm in your corner, you should do really great, good job. And then somehow goes behind her back and then stirs up some drama, and Cara says, that's typically Anissa. And Tori does not say anything. Tori doesn't say, oh no, that's not typical Anissa, don't say my friend. Don't do my friend dirty like that. Olivia apologizes. Norice says that she will be able to accept Olivia's apology, but they probably will never be best friends ever again. And this is when Laurel comes in and says that, hey, sometimes it's good for a friendship to break up. Once a friendship breaks up, maybe you'll come back together and the friendship will be rekindled, but maybe it'll be just something different. It'll look different than what was previously the friendship. And maybe some seasons have to pass. It was nice to hear Laurel say that, because knowing the history between Laurel and Cara, it seems like they are on better terms now. Things were contentious with them at one point. They did seem to be the bestest of friends, and then they broke up, and then maybe they're cordial with one another. And you know, that gives anybody hope, I think, if you know their story. We get a boring little fan question segment where Maria asked Tori what's the snakiest moment of the season was, and Tori doesn't want to say anything. Oh my gosh, snakiest thing? Well, let me think. I don't want to say anything about anybody that might be on another season or I don't know very well and I call them out right now, and then that's problems for me if they get on another season with me. So, maybe Emmanuel cheating on his girlfriend, because she's really close with Emmanuel, and anything she says, he's just going to let roll off his back. So she doesn't want to say Olivia saving Mariah, because then that calls out Olivia and maybe calls out Mariah a little bit. Doesn't want to say anything about Jay, because Jay might be on another season. It just was so like contrived that all of a sudden Tori can't say anything. Oh no, I don't know anybody that was snaky on this season. Do I know what even the word snaky means? So I'm just going to default to the low-hanging fruit of Emmanuel cheating on his girlfriend, which was very snaky, I will say, but it was just the whole theatrics of like, Then Mariah is asked the question of who plays the most desperate game. Mariah decides that she is going to the draw, even though she has an answer and is willing to say the answer. We never really get a true answer from Mariah because Mariah goes and pulls and gets the Chaos Club. Randomly, Melissa is chosen to answer, and Melissa says Corey because he used Big T and Melissa and then was flipping on them and flipping the switch and was kind of scrambling through the entire game trying to get his game back on track. Maria then goes back to Mariah saying, hey, well, do you want to give your answer? And before she could give an answer, Colleen says Michelle played a pretty desperate game. Michelle gets so angry with Colleen calling her desperate that she stands up, starts giving it to Colleen, and then Colleen goes, I don't know what desperate means. I asked Corey, and he gave like a weird definition, and so I just said Michelle played desperate if that's the definition of desperate. I could see Colleen not knowing the definition of what desperate means, but if she did a great job of walking that back, being like, I don't want that smoke. Now I'm just gonna walk back. Colleen had said nothing this entire time, and just when you think things are gonna get exciting, she just walks it back going like, I don't know what desperate is, don't, whatever. Just when you thought Colleen was gonna get real spicy in this reunion, she gives us absolutely nothing, like she has been the entire season. We go to the final commercial break, and then we come back, and we have to go back over the parent alliance between Asaf and Melissa. Why do we have to keep bringing Asaf into the conversation? It just makes no sense. He's got more screen time than some of the actual finalists that made it to the finals on this season. Yet, we have to talk about Asaf. Asaf brings up yet again that the whole deal between him and Melissa was that if they just heard each other's names being thrown out there, they would let each other know. Melissa says that was totally a lie. She says that Asaf told her that she is a mom, he is a father, they should look out for each other. He wants her to go very far, but really looking back on it, he didn't give one crap about Melissa or how far she went or really anything about her. This is where the gameplay of the new players is a little bit wonky because they bring so many personal things into the game that when they mix that with the game, it gets confusing with other players. If you're gonna bring up that you're a parent and bring up that we have kids, we should look out for each other, and then you backstab that person, things get muddy of what is real and what is just used for the game. And that's where the real problem comes in. Melissa and Asaf argue a whole bunch. Kylan finally joins into the conversation because I kind of truly forgot Kylan was even at this reunion. He has said nothing this entire part one of this reunion until this point, and Kylan decides to step up. Asaf tells him to butt out. You want me to do something? And Kylan said, that one daily challenge when you thought I was talking about your mom, you didn't do anything. So you're not going to do anything to me now if you didn't do anything to me back then. Asaf stands up, gets into Kylan's face. Kylan stands up. Security is instantly called, and this is the perfect time to stop the reunion part one, leave off on a cliffhanger, and what's probably going to be an anticlimactic finish is that when we start reunion part two next week, they're going to get into each other's faces for like half a minute to a minute, and then they're going to just be separated, and then they're going to be fine the rest of the time, and we're going to get into a couple of more segments. It seems like reunion part two is going to be a little bit juicier. This wasn't a terrible reunion, but to me, I still feel like the reunions are so unnecessary because of social media, people going on Instagram lives right after the episodes, every single week, after every single episode, people putting all their business on Twitter. There's now an official podcast. There's multiple podcasts now that challengers can go on to, give their own piece every single week, week in and week out, that by the time we get to the reunion, I feel like we've already heard all of these storylines. We've already delved into every single angle with every single person. And realistically, they cut out the juiciest parts anyways. But this wasn't a terrible reunion. It was fine. But that is it for the reunion part one. What did you think about this episode? Let me know down in the comment section below. What did you think about the segments? Which was your favorite? Did you find anything juicy? Did you think anything was very interesting that was brought up that maybe I didn't mention or find interesting enough to mention? Let me know down in the comment section below. I want to give a special shout out thank you to everyone who supports me over at patreon.com/angelcakevids. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's watching this video up to this point. I'll be back really soon with more Challenge 39 content, more challenge content in general. But until then, peace.